Okay, right, YouTube's on. So Vayikra, the third book. Um, Now, normally you could ask the question, like we did a little bit last time, Vayakal Pakude, when it becomes one parsha, why were certain double parshas chosen to be put together and others not? Um, Also, you could ask, why does each book finish where it finishes? Why are there five books of the Torah? Why not four? Why not fit it into one? So the fact that they're divided as they are, everything is for a reason, exactly. So to be in the middle of the five books, the third book, Vayikra, it's basically this sefer, this book is the centerpiece of the Torah. It is, in a way, everything builds up to this moment. Hello, Rena. You're live. Good night. She didn't read it. Never mind. Okay, so this is everything's building up. Now, a lot of chadorim, a lot of chedas, when they're teaching children how to read, they actually start from the book of Vayikra. They start with Vayikra El Moshe. Let me just open up Chumash. So it starts off Vayikra Moshe. God called to Moses, Vaydaber Hashem elav, and God spoke to him, saying, May Ohel Moed Lamor, from the tent of meeting. God spoke to him from the tent of meeting. Okay. Now, a lot of children start with this verse, this first pasuk, um, because they want to start with this book of the Torah, which talks about holy things, what makes a person holy, how to avoid impurity, the laws of the sacrifices, the laws of how the Kohanim had to conduct themselves, the laws of purity in general, and a lot of laws. We'll get to the idea of what sacrifices, what it means to us nowadays, because it seems very foreign idea to us. And we've not had the temple for thousands of years. So the idea of all the sacrifices, which we go through in a lot of detail in the next few pastures, seem a little bit, it's hard to relate to sometimes. But the idea of a child starting the reading from this point, as you know, a child's brain is very malleable, very pure, it's like a sponge. So the first thing, the first verses we want children to learn from are from this book of Vayikra that talks about purity. And obviously children are pure and not cynical yet, not corrupted yet. So that's important to point out. The aleph of the word Vayikra, if you look in the Sefer Torah, is a small aleph. Right, every letter in the alphabet at some point in the 24 books of the Torah in Tanakh, every letter is at some point big, like the big base of Bereshis, and obviously many times regular size. But at one point it will also be in a small font, small type. Every letter, and this only ever happens once. So it will be once be big, once be small, and then the rest of the time it will be regular size. Which is interesting that every letter has this. So the aleph, the small aleph, pops up here at the beginning of this book. Vayikra El Moshe, God calls to Moses. Now, why does it start off with Vayikra, that God called to Moses? When you call someone, or you beckon for someone to come over, it's meant to be more, as Rashi points out, it shows endearment. It shows that God loved Moshe, chiba, chabibi. It's a lotion of chiba. It's an expression of love, of being beloved, of cherishing someone. So God calls to Moses. So you remember, Moshe writes this all down. He's writing the Torah as they go, pretty much. And he feels uncomfortable to write that God called to him in such a loving and intimate way. So he wrote the Aleph little. So then it's almost like you don't see the Aleph, and then it would be read Vayikar, that God happened like he happened to bump into Moshe. If you bump into someone in the store, in the shop, and you say, "Oh, I've been meaning to call you about something urgent for months." Yeah, it's like, well, if it was really that urgent, they'd have called you already. Yeah, the fact that you happen to bump into them into the shop and then you bring it up shows it wasn't really ever that urgent. It wasn't really ever really on your mind. Just happens to be now you bumped into them, you'll have a chat and they catch up.
When
Yeah,
you
it's a
say,
bit
Rabbi, sorry, when you say that's an expression of love, is
yeah.
that does that apply to all of the small letters in the Torah?
Oh, so no, it just applies to this expression of Vayikra, that why would God normally it says Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor, that's the standard. And God spoke to Moses saying, but here is God first called out to Moses. It was making a special point to say this calling was a bit like if you were to call a loved one across the house, you'd almost serenade them. You call out their name in a loving way. So that is what God did to Moshe. So Moshe, being very modest and sort of uncomfortable with this, he thought, I'm not that great. Why is God calling to me like this? So he thought, I'll write it with a small aleph, which then could be read as instead of Vayikra, it'll just be Vayikar, which means this is the example of bumping into someone in the shop. You weren't planning on meeting them, you're just bumping into them. Or this is how God appeared to Bilam, the non-Jewish prophet. He chanced upon Bilam. Yeah. It's a bit like when someone sends an email to you. You don't know who the person is. They send an email. It's not a personal, there's no real connection there. You call someone that's a bit stronger. You meet someone first, obviously in person, then that's going to create a stronger relationship because you actually have met that person. When people write to each other, actually handwrite letters. It's not really a done thing now. Um, but I remember in school, um, old enough to say that our reports were all handwritten by the teachers. Whereas nowadays everything's printed. All the reports we get from school, it's all just printed out. But the old days, each teacher would write a report. And a funny story that no one really knew how to spell my name properly because it was some people spell Rafi, one F, two Fs, Phy, Phi. So the head teacher had enough. He called me over and said, "How do you spell your name?" And so I was like, Fi, Rafi. So he got all the teachers that had spelt it differently to rewrite the report with the same spelling. So it was very, very proper. If you write to someone, yeah, it's a bit more intimate. So this is what Hashem was conveying to Moshe. Moshe, I love you. I'm calling out to you. Moshe felt a bit awkward about it. It's like when someone's praising you and you sort of deflect the praise, you'd feel uncomfortable. So he wrote a little aleph. So it could be read that God bumped into Moshe, he chanced upon Moshe, but not this whole that he lovingly called out. So that's why this aleph is small. Interesting, where the aleph is big because we remember it's once big, once small, and the rest time regular. It is once big in Chronicles, the Book of Chronicles, when it talks about the from the creation or all mankind, the generations, and when it talks about Adam Harishon, the first man, primordial Adam, his name is spelled with a big aleph, Adam, which is ironic because Adam, as we know, he sinned because he got a bit ahead of himself. Different opinions of what he did wrong, but one is that he told Eve not to even touch the fruit, not to even touch the tree of knowledge, even though the command was only not to eat. Yeah. So he told her, don't even touch it. He thought it was being clever. Yeah. If you can't touch it, then you can't do anything. You for sure can't eat it. It's a bit like muks on Shabbos. If you can't touch money, then you're not going to spend it, which is the actual prohibition of, doing business and transactions. So he thought, I'll add an extra layer of prohibition. But then the snake pushed, at least according to one interpretation, pushed Eve into the tree and said, "Oh, since you touched it and nothing happened, you can also eat from the tree." Yeah. So in the end, what Adam thought was being clever, actually, it backfired. Sometimes, if you think you're the big aleph, you're the big cheese, you end up making mistakes, however subtle they might be. So Adam with a big aleph, but he made a mistake. When God is calling Moshe was like, I don't want the big aleph to be here. I'm a regular aleph. I'm going to put a small aleph because I don't want a big show about me that God's calling me out in such a loving way. I'll do a small aleph. And as we know, Moshe was the most humble person that ever lived. So to contrast that with Adam and Moshe, it's interesting how the aleph, Moshe went for a small aleph. Yes, Lindsay.
It's interesting though that Moshe felt that he had the authority to adjust the Torah that Hashem had written, Because
Yeah,
what
it's a
you're
good
saying is
point.
Moshe wrote it, not I thought it was Hashem who wrote it and gave it to Moshe.
Yeah, yeah. So you're right. Moshe wrote it. So how did he? How was he able to have the jurisdiction to, make little changes here and there? Um, but I guess he had a small amount of stylistic interpretation as he was writing it, and he put a small aleph here. I'm trying to think of any other examples like that. The daughters of Slochod, Moshe forgot what the rule was in terms of inheritance for girls
Yeah.
if a man had no boys. So he wasn't
Very
sure.
important in our family.
Yeah, 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 definitely. You're outnumbered. Um, so he had to check what the law was, and because the daughters of Slochad reminded Moshe or brought up this question, that extra portion in the Torah was added because of them, of the daughters of Slochad. So we do see that if there's a lesson to be learned or something that can teach others, then we will add it. Or in Moshe's case, he slightly edited the size, altered the size of the aleph. Yeah. Okay. So we mentioned that children they start learning to read from Vayikra. And we mentioned the small aleph. Now, just to look at this verse carefully, Vayikra Moshe, so God called to Moses, Vaydaber Hashem elav, and God spoke to him, Ohel Ma'ed Lamar, from the tent of meeting, saying. So when it says Vaydaber, that's the regular expression that God uses. God spoke. That is just transmitting information to Moshe, and then Moshe would then transmit it to Aaron, and then he would transmit it again to Aaron's sons, and then to the elders. Yeah, every time there was a law that needed transmitting, he would tell it over 4 times. Yeah, which is the importance of repetition, because you could do something every year, Pesach every year. Sometimes we forget. Unless you're constantly going over something, at least 4 times it takes for it to go in. It's interesting. Okay. By the way, we mentioned that God speaks to certain people in a like Bilam, or bad prophets or evil prophets. He chances upon people. Yeah, he sort of appears to them. There's no sort of warning. Well, one of the reasons Moshe separated from his own wife, Zipporah, which was controversial to a point, because if you remember, Miriam and Aaron, his brother and sister, um, were then speaking to each other, saying, we are also prophets, but we didn't separate from our spouses. The Moshe always wanted to be ready in case God would ever call upon him. He was pure, and that's why he separated from his wife, so he never would need to maybe go to the mikveh first before speaking with God. And he moved out of the tent with his wife and moved into his own tent. And they felt, Miriam and Aaron, that was already a bit too much. And poor Tzipporah, she married you, and now you're not really living together. But of course, the problem there was that Miriam and Aaron should have gone to Moshe quietly and said, we're concerned about Tzipporah, your dear wife. Is it necessary that you have to be separate the whole time, just in case, because you have to be ready at any second that Hashem might call you? That would have been the way to deal with it, but. They had a little meeting first, Miriam and Aaron, and that was considered Lashon Hara in that way. Even though you understand how delicate Lashon Hara is, they were actually concerned for Moshe and his wife and their welfare and their marriage. But because they should have discussed it at source with Moshe, that was considered already out of place for them to be discussing Moshe's marital life between them. When it comes to Bilam that we mentioned, that God just chances upon him, we see this also a little bit with Haman in the Purim story. It's still fresh. That when Esther invited Haman to the feast with the king, Haman was so excited because it was all about him. He didn't feel honored in that. Oh wow, the queen is so amazing, and the queen and the king, they want me at their special sunnah. I'm so honored. I'll make sure I'm a loyal subject. I'll do whatever they ask me to do. It was nothing about the queen or the king. It was all about himself. Look at me, I've been invited, and he would boast about it. Yeah. Whereas Moshe, the complete opposite, going back to this idea that he felt like I don't want to make a show. I don't want to make a fuss. I'll make the Aleph small. Um, and you'll see this with truly modest people. That if you make a fuss about them, they really don't like it. But people that can't get enough, however much you praise them, um, they'll need more and more. So it's important again why the third book of the Torah starts with this. Seemingly just miss it. Okay, God called to Moses. He loves Moshe, but the only way to climb the spiritual ladder is by removing feelings of self. Um, Taking credit or always looking for credit or trying to be better than your fellow, but in a way that you can sort of look down on them. That's obviously not the approach we want. According to some opinions, the students of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Kiva's students, that all died in the plague, over the Omer period. That was a little bit their issue at that time. Each one of them was learning, and they were convinced that they were correct, that their way of understanding the Gemara, let's say, was correct, and they would dismiss their colleagues or their learning partners. Like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. No, you don't understand it properly. I understand it better than you. And although they were trying to convey their understanding of the Torah to their fellow, which is in one way is good. That's what a chavrusa is, or a shiur. You're giving over information. You're bounced back and forth. But ultimately, if you think that you know best the whole time, that's going to be a problem. And it got to a point where they would dismiss their colleagues, or they would think, I understand it better than them. I'm not listening to them, and that's how this plague broke out. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai comes to mind because he was, I believe, one of the students that rebuilt after that plague of all the students dying. 5 students came up and started to build again, and Shimon Bar Yochai was one of those. It's a little bit like also if the king, I don't know, depending how much of into the monarchy you are or you're not, but let's say you're very pro monarchy, pro the royal family. If the king personally called you up to work for him, and you're just a regular, let's say, just a regular peasant. Let's even go back a few hundred years. When king could kill you. So the real royalty, yeah. And the king asks you, "I want you to work for me." There's no bigger honor. It's once in a lifetime a moment, or 1 in a million. You've been chosen to serve the king. Now you're not going to start saying, "Well, I'll do it, but I don't want to do the gardening and I don't want to do the cooking and what's my salary and how much time do I get off?" That is not. That's just not how it would be. So when God calls to Moshe, it's always about what I can do for God, and in our own way, each one of us, God has chosen us as part of the Jewish people. But I want you to make this world a home for me. We have to think, what do I get out? We can't be thinking, what do I get out of it? Is it worth it? Can I be bothered? What are the terms and the conditions? What's my rewards going to be? What's in it for me in the next world? What guarantees can I get? Everything will be good now. So that's really, that all needs parking to one side, and it should be a moment of, wow, we've been chosen. Yes, it is a mighty and awesome task, and it's not always easy, and it comes with a lot of difficulties, especially since we represent God, and that means anyone that doesn't like what we represent will go after the Jews. But ultimately, it is a calling that God calls to each one of us, to each neshama that He places on this world, and says, "I want you to work for me, to be in partnership with me." So now we move on to the actual sacrifices. So the Torah, like we said, it's hard for us to relate to sacrifices, really, especially with all the sprinkling of the blood and the innards and which bits were burnt up and which bits were eaten by the Kohanim and which bits could be eaten by the owners. Obviously, the Paschal lamb we're a little bit more familiar with because we to a point reenact and we do actually relive Seder night. We are not just remembering, we are reliving. We're drawing the spiritual energy down of Pesach every year. But in general, this idea of concepts, it says in the Pasuk Daber b'nei Israel. This is the second verse. We're flying through onto verse 2 now. Speak to the children of Israel. Remember, God is speaking to Moshe. And he's telling, speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, Adam, a man, ki yakriv mikem, karban Hashem, a person from amongst you who will bring a sacrifice to God. Or a man from amongst you brings, when a man from amongst you brings an offering to God. Okay? Now, the rabbis are quick to point out, many commentators, why does it say, Adam, oh, where's it gone? Adam ki yakriv mikem, when a man brings from amongst you, it should say, Adam mikem ki yakriv. It should say, a man from amongst you who wants to bring an offering. Yeah? Adam mikem ki yakriv. Why did it say Adam ki yakriv mikem? When a man from amongst you brings an offering. It makes it sound, I don't know if it's coming over in the English, but it makes it sound like when a person wants to bring a sacrifice, it needs to be from their actual person. Does that make sense? It should say, when a man brings an offering to God from amongst you. Yeah, that's how the Hebrew should be written. So it should say, Adam mikem ki yakriv. That would be the correct grammatical way of saying it. When a man brings an offering to God from amongst you. Okay, this is what you should do, depending on what the animal is. But instead, it says, Adam ki yakriv mikem. When a man brings an offering from literally from yourself. When a person wants to bring an offering from themselves. That is how the Hebrew is written. So we understand. So it's not just talking about the physical offering, which of course the Torah goes into detail. If it's a burnt offering, different types of matzah, unleavened offerings, and the flour offerings, and whether it's a sheep or goat or birds, etc. Peace offerings, guilt offerings. We got them all in here. That's the actual the laws are obviously delineated in the Parsha, but it's also saying when a person wants to bring a sacrifice to God, they actually need to the sacrifice needs to come from the actual person. But what does that mean? We don't do human sacrifice. It means you have to sacrifice your inner desires, your emotions, whether that's anger, lust, whatever vices a person has, and also the word korban, sacrifice. That's how he translates it in the Chumash often, but it's from the word karev, to come close. You know, someone is a relative is a kroivim. Kroivim are relatives. Because they're very close to you. That's why this word karev is used. So korban, literally, yeah, we say literally it means to come close. A person that wants to come close to God must bring an offering from themselves. So, as you know, with a sacrifice, they first had to check it that it didn't have any blemishes. So if it had like a split lip, or it had cataracts, I don't know, something wrong with its eye, a broken limb, there's a whole list of things that would disqualify the animal. So the person first had to check. Since Pesach's coming up, they would check 4 days in the lead up to Seder night. They would check the animal to make sure it didn't develop any blemish. So the equivalent of that would be for a person needs to check themselves. It's really all these ideas. Chametz, yeah, chametz is the problem is leavened food. That is a big problem over Pesach. And if you eat chametz, it's a severe punishment. And if you eat a kazayis, an olive's bulk of chametz, it's a spiritual excision. You know, that's like considered the worst punishment. What, for eating a bit of unleavened bread? I mean, leavened bread, but eating a bit of povis is worse. The Torah punishment is worse for that than stealing off someone or even killing someone or beating someone up. But that is all considered compared to the punishment you get for eating a bit of bread on Pesach, pales in comparison. But it can't just be eating a bit of bread. It can't be having a bit of pasta or bisli. That is so horrifically bad spiritually. But when we understand what chametz represents, which is the ego, the idea of self-inflated, you know, being self-centered and having a big ego, this is all links in with the Vayikra, the big aleph, the small aleph. To understand what chametz represents is the problem, and that's why it filters down that physical chametz is spiritually so bad for you, even though it's just a bit of bread. Is really the idea of ego, the source of all sin. So going back to the sacrifices, when we're talking about sacrificing an animal, yes, you have the physical animal that needs sacrificing, and you need to check it for blemishes, and then you need to shecht it and make sure you drain all the blood. We're saying really all those parts of the process with the sacrifice also apply to a person's spiritual service as well. It's not just you take an animal and you sacrifice it and it gets rid of your sin, or it atones for your sin, or it fulfills your obligation for the holiday, or it's etc. When you're going up for the three regalim, the 3 foot festivals, you need to bring an animal. You need to bring a Paschal lamb. Really, every sacrifice and every part of the process that took place was also required spiritual investment. As we see many times, the prophets often rebuke the Jewish people, saying, "You're bringing sacrifices, but you're not changing your ways. You're bringing, you're bringing up these animals, and you're basically trying to pay your way out of changing, out of working on yourself." So the sacrifice in itself wasn't really going to do anything for you. You had to invest every part of the stage, every stage along the way. You had to do for yourself. So we mentioned you have to check the animal that it has no blemish. So a person has to check themselves that they don't have any serious or clear flaws in their character and their behavior. Okay, then they have to shecht it, like I mentioned. All the blood needed to be drained. So that would be your passion, your excitement for physical things, which we all have, because we all have an animal soul. Yeah. So we're not just sacrificing the physical animal; we're applying to this to the animal inside of us. Okay, and then the Torah goes to list different types of animals. Mina bakar, from the flock. An ox is a raging ox. Ox. You don't want to upset an ox or a cow. Whereas a sheep, I'm not saying you should start up with sheep, but they're docile. Yeah, they're not going to charge after you, not in the same way as an ox anyway. So every person has a different type of Yetzer Hara. Yeah, some people have more of an ox, some people have more of a sheep, some more of a donkey. Yeah, a donkey is a bit more stubborn, like a donkey, like a mule. Yeah, so each step of the way, a person needed to apply the lessons to themselves, and hopefully when they saw the animal being shechted, anyone could shecht an animal. By the way, it didn't have to be a Kohen or a Levi. It could be a man. According to Torah level, it could be a woman as well. But for whatever reason, throughout history, shechtim always became a man's job. Maybe not sure. I guess all of these things that when it becomes customary to do it in one way, it's considered to change it just to make a point isn't something that we do. But in theory, women could shecht. So Olivia, if you anyway not squeamish, it's good to know that you could be done, but it's not the custom. Okay, just to close with one more idea.
Sorry, we were still muted, but Olivia wanted to point out that she's done a circumcision.
Done circumcisions on adult men. So,
Oh, okay. Well, you're ahead of me. Yeah, yeah. I think I am a bit squirmish, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. So here's an idea of self-sacrifice that applies to most of us. Obviously, we pray and we hope we never have to be in a situation where we actually have to sacrifice our physical lives to God. But unfortunately, throughout history, the Inquisitions, the Crusades, Jews have had to sometimes give up their life for God and actually be a martyr. Generally, it's for only 3 sins that this applies: idol worship, immorality, and murder. So if someone said to you, "You either do one of these 3 sins, or we'll kill you," officially, you're meant to bite the bullet for those three sins. But everything else, besides those 3, you would go along and break whatever mitzvah it is. Shabbos would be one of those, as you know, to live. So Torah, we believe in life, and we sanctify God by living and doing mitzvahs. But if a moment comes where we have to give up our lives, there are moments that Jewish people throughout history have stepped up. But a small version of that would be, I was trying to think, let's say you're around a table or you're at a social gathering or a party, and a few people start saying something about someone else that's classic bit of lashon hara, or maybe saying something vulgar, something that's not appropriate. Now, for someone in that group to stand up and say, "Can you not? Can we change the conversation?" or "I'd rather we don't speak about this." Yeah, so that can be very difficult for a person because they might then be excluding themselves from that friendship group, or they might be putting themselves in a difficult situation. They might feel a bit compromised, whatever it is. But that is a small sort of idea or window into self-sacrifice. You're sort of pushing against the grain, forcing yourself to do the right thing, even though it's very difficult. So when those moments come up, that is also a way of talking about sacrifices. So that would be a way of sacrificing your inner animal to push yourself to do the right thing and not to do what's easy, but to do what's right. So it's not always obvious when we're reading about sacrifices that this is what's going on. But each step of the process, also which parts of the animals were taken out. I'm not going to go through all of them. The 2 kidneys, the fats on the kidney, the flanks, the diaphragm, the liver, part of the liver, which bits were eaten, which were not. It's all fascinating, but we've got a few weeks on sacrifices, so we will pick it up next week. Thank you for joining.
Square.
3's a crowd.
Well done.
Okay. We have the Gemara share next. So if you want, you could even stay on. I'm going to let the new batch in.
Yeah, have a great time.
Thank you very much.
Have a great
Hold
time.
the fort. Thanks, Colin.
Bye.
And enjoy the bar mitzvah.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure we will. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Oh, Jack, I didn't see you there.
Hey, Rabbi.
Yes, Rabbi. Sorry, I was not.
Hi, Andy.
I was on mute. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Very informative. Oh, is
Yeah,
that?
I see.
Oh, Andy Preston. Hello, Andy Preston.
Hello, Jack.
Hello. Right. Okay. Very informative.
Yeah, Jack, you have to come again. Was that your first?
Enjoy the weekend, Rabbi. I've forgotten where you're going now, but enjoy.
Yeah. Thank you, Antwerp. Yes.
Oh, Antwerp. Oh, right. Okay. Fine. Okay.
This is your first. That's your first parsha share, though, yeah.
I think it's the first one I've joined. I didn't realise it was on Zoom, to be honest. But there you go.
Okay, good.
I'll
We'll
remember
see you
in the
more
future.
often. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely.
Have
Okay,
a
have a good one.
weekend. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Jack.
Bye.
Bye, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so just okay, perfect timing. Right, let me get the Gemara.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else is going to join.
It might just be a Russa tonight.
Okay, can do
But
that.
that's good
That's
because
good.
we've still got to learn it either way.
Yeah.
We'll
Did
see how
Simon say he was going to join?
Actually, I didn't remind him at Mario, but he was there. I'll just write on starting now, just in case.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
When did you get back from Belgium? On Sunday?
Yeah, Sunday night. Yeah, he's gone. Okay. Yeah. Right. So yeah, looking good in the league and the Champions League.
Yeah. I saw Liverpool just scored, so they're it's on the knife edge for Liverpool. Everyone else is out or going out.
They're not. No one's really consistent besides your lot.
Mm.
Yeah, it's good because we don't want Pep winning anything else. Had enough.
There's a Carabao Cup final on Sunday. Should be fun.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Who's yeah.
Arsenal and City.
Wow. I wonder if you'll be both putting full squads out.
I imagine they will because there's an international break.
Oh right, yeah. So yeah, it times it well.
Yeah.
And then you've got Southampton, haven't you, in the FA Cup?
Yeah.
That'll be 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, one game at a time.
And that just reminds me that we stopped the recording. Because I record the partial share for